The first time I encountered Dr. David Gibson, it felt like staring into the abyss of perfectionism wrapped in cruelty. He strode into the room with an air of superiority so thick it could choke anyone within a 10-foot radius. His eyes scanned us like we were nothing more than insects under his microscope, fragile, insignificant, and utterly disposable. "Remember this day," he barked, his voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel slicing flesh. "Your lives are about to change dramatically." And oh, how right he was. But not in the way we expected. This wasn't just some motivational speech. It was a declaration of war. A battle against sleep, sanity, and self-worth. He didn't stop at belittling our dreams or mocking our aspirations. No, that would have been too kind for someone like him. Instead, he singled out women, his disdain dripping from every word like venom. "Women can't make good doctors," he sneered later, his tone laced with condescension. "You get distracted, you fall in love, you have babies, and then you get bored." The room froze, his words hanging heavy in the air like storm clouds ready to burst. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. The curl of his lips, the dismissive flick of his wrist, the way his gaze lingered on me as if daring me to challenge him. In that moment, I knew this man wasn't here to mentor us. He was here to break us, or at least try. The sharp sting of gravel embedded in my knee was nothing compared to the humiliation I felt walking into that hospital. My car had skidded on a patch of oil just blocks away, leaving me with a scraped leg and a bruised ego. But as I limped through the sterile corridors of St. Matthew's, clutching my medical bag like it was some kind of lifeline, I realized this was only the beginning of my pain. Dr. Gibson's voice cut through the air like a blade. Sharp, cold, and utterly unyielding, his gaze landed on me the moment I entered late, singling me out like prey caught in headlights. "Late for the first day of your internship?" he spat, his tone dripping with disdain. "Nice touch." Each word felt like a slap across my face, but worse than his words were the snickers from the other interns behind me. Their eyes burned holes into my back, their smirks silently mocking my already fragile confidence. I tried to steady myself, swallowing hard against the lump forming in my throat. "Dr. Gibson," I began, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound composed. "I've been assigned elsewhere, a central hospital downtown. But I chose to come here instead. To work under you." The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above us. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes. Was it curiosity? Respect? But then it vanished, replaced by an even colder glare. "You chose us?" He leaned forward slightly, his posture predatory as if ready to pounce. "Over one of those fancy hospitals downtown? Why would anyone do that?" His question hung heavy in the air, daring me to answer. And so I did. "Because you're one of the best doctors in the country," I said firmly, though my hands clenched tightly around my bag betrayed my nerves. "And I want to learn from the best." His laugh was harsh, grating against my ears like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, how sweet. Flattery won't get you far here, honey." The way he emphasized honey made my skin crawl. It wasn't affectionate, it was condescending, dismissive. "Let me make something clear," he continued, stepping closer until his towering frame loomed over mine. "I don't have faith in any of you. Not one bit. Especially not women." His gaze swept over me, judgmental and unforgiving. "You'll get distracted, fall in love, have babies. Then you'll quit because you realize medicine isn't for people like you. My cheeks burned with shame and anger. But before I could respond, he barked another order. Ward 303, discharge the patient. Prove to me you can handle even the simplest tasks. Or leave. The weight of his ultimatum crushed me. This wasn't just about proving myself anymore. It was survival. If I failed, I'd be gone. Not just from this hospital, but perhaps from my dream altogether. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of the other interns exchanging knowing glances. Their expressions a mix of pity and amusement. They thought I wouldn't last the week. Maybe they were right. But as I walked toward Ward 303, determination surged within me. I refused to let Dr. Gibson or anyone else see me crumble. Little did I know the challenges ahead were far greater than I could have imagined, and the stakes much higher than simply keeping my position. Ayush Sharma wasn't just another name on a file. He was my first real test, a challenge that would define whether I belonged in this hospital or not. Walking into room 303, clipboard in hand, I tried to steady myself against the storm brewing inside me. Dr. Gibson's earlier words echoed like thunder. Prove yourself or leave. But as I approached Ayush, I realized his case was far more complicated than the sparse notes suggested. His chart mentioned only minor injuries from a motorcycle accident, nothing life-threatening. Yet something about him seemed off. He sat hunched over, clutching his chest, beads of sweat forming on his forehead despite the air-conditioned room. Good afternoon, Mr. Ayush, I began, forcing a smile. Can you tell me how you're feeling? He looked up, confusion clouding his eyes. Bad English, he muttered, gesturing vaguely at his throat and chest. My heart sank. Language barriers were one thing I hadn't anticipated, but now they loomed large between us, threatening to derail any chance of proper communication. Desperation clawed at me as I scrambled for solutions. It's okay, I said slowly, pointing to myself. I'm Molly, doctor. Then, mimicking pain on my own face, I asked, pain? Where? His trembling finger pointed toward his abdomen, then his chest. The inconsistency alarmed me. Was it internal bleeding? Organ damage? Or worse? Every second counted, yet every attempt to communicate felt like wading through quicksand. When I returned to Dr. Gibson later, hoping for guidance, his reaction was predictably dismissive. Listen, Palmer, he snapped, barely glancing up from his paperwork. If you can't handle basic discharge procedures, maybe medicine isn't for you. But there's something wrong with him, I insisted, frustration boiling over. He's in pain and we're missing something. Dr. Gibson leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Patients lie all the time, especially ones looking for payouts. The accusation stung, but I refused to back down. So what? We ignore them when they're actually sick? What if he dies because we didn't listen? My voice cracked under the weight of my emotions, drawing curious stares from nearby staff. For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then, without warning, an alarm blared down the hall. A code blew. My stomach dropped. Rushing to Ayush's room, I found chaos erupting around him. Nurses worked frantically to stabilize him as monitors screamed warnings. His blood pressure plummeted while his breathing grew labored. Panic surged through me. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not today, not here. Get him to ICU, someone shouted, breaking the paralysis gripping the room. As they wheeled him away, I stood frozen, guilt crushing me. Had I failed already? Could I have done more? Back in the ER, tempers flared among the senior doctors who accused each other of negligence. Meanwhile, I stood alone. battling both self-doubt and mounting pressure. Time slipped away like sand through fingers, leaving me scrambling for answers no one else seemed willing to find. The moment Ayush's monitor flatlined, time seemed to warp. 1 second stretched into an eternity, while the next compressed into a blur of chaos. My heart pounded like a drum as nurses scrambled around me, shouting orders I could barely process. "BP's dropping!" someone yelled, their voice cracking under pressure. "Get the crash cart!" Another voice echoed faintly in the background, but all I could focus on was Ayush's pale face and labored breathing. His chest barely rose with each desperate gasp for air, and every beep from the machine felt like a countdown to disaster. I sprinted toward Dr. Gibson's office, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Bursting through the door without knocking, I found him engrossed in a chess game with another doctor. "Dr. Gibson!" I shouted, my voice trembling but urgent. "Ayush is in trouble. His blood pressure is plummeting." He didn't even look up. "What did I tell you about discharging patients? Did you mess this up too?" "No, you don't understand," I insisted, tears threatening to spill over. "There's something seriously wrong with him. His vitals are crashing, and we need answers now." For a brief moment, he paused, his hand hovering mid-air above the chessboard. Then with a dismissive wave, he said, "It's probably just anxiety. Give him some sugar water and send him home." "Sugar water won't fix this," I snapped, surprising even myself with the force of my words. "His oxygen levels are dangerously low. He can't breathe properly. We need x-rays." "We already did x-rays," he interrupted sharply. "They showed nothing abnormal. Stop wasting everyone's time." Desperation clawed at my throat. How could I make him see what I knew deep down? "Then let's check again. Please, Dr. Gibson. If we wait any longer, it might be too late." His chair screeched against the floor as he stood abruptly, his eyes narrowing into slits. "You think you know better than me? After one day here? Get out of my sight before I throw you out myself." But I couldn't leave. Not when Ayush's life hung by a thread. Back in the ER, the scene had devolved into controlled pandemonium. Someone handed me a phone, urging me to translate for Ayush. Through broken phrases, he managed to describe swallowing gravel during the accident, a detail that hadn't been documented anywhere. My stomach churned. Could this be the missing piece? "Dr. Gibson!" I called again, racing back to his office. This time I didn't care about protocol or consequences. "He swallowed rubble. It's stuck in his airway." "And you expect me to believe that?" he sneered, crossing his arms defiantly. "Even if it were true, which it isn't, we don't have the equipment for such a procedure." End of discussion. End of discussion? Not if I had anything to say about it. Summoning every ounce of courage, I turned to the head nurse. "We need to prep him for emergency surgery. Now." She hesitated, glancing nervously between me and Dr. Gibson. "But without clearance." "I'll take full responsibility," I interrupted firmly. "If we don't act, he dies." Reluctantly, they agreed. As the team wheeled Ayush to the OR, I prayed silently that we weren't already too late. The operating room buzzed with tension, makeshift tools clinking together as we worked against the clock. Finally, after what felt like hours, we located the obstruction. A jagged piece of gravel lodged precariously in his trachea. Removing it felt like pulling a splinter from fate itself. When Ayush stabilized, relief washed over me, but only briefly. Ahead lay the inevitable confrontation with Dr. Gibson, who would surely demand answers and retribution. The confrontation with Dr. Gibson came at the end of what felt like the longest day of my life. My nerves were frayed, my body ached from exhaustion, and yet adrenaline kept me upright as I stood in his office once more. The room was dimly lit. the faint hum of fluorescent lights above casting long shadows across his desk. He sat there, reclined in his chair, exuding an air of indifference that made my stomach churn. "Well," he began, his tone dripping with impatience. "What do you want now? Another lecture on how incompetent I am?" "No," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected despite the storm brewing inside me. "I just wanted to say thank you." His eyebrows shot up in surprise, but only for a moment before skepticism hardened his features again. "Thank you? For what? Throwing you into the deep end? Making sure you know exactly what kind of shark-infested waters you're swimming in? For believing in me," I said firmly, meeting his gaze head-on. "Even if you didn't mean to," he scoffed, leaning forward slightly. "Don't try to twist this into some heartwarming story, Palmer. You proved yourself today because you had no other choice. That's all." "Maybe," I admitted, taking a step closer. "But there's something else you should know." "Oh, here we go," he muttered under his breath, rolling his eyes. "I'm your daughter." Silence fell over the room so abruptly it was deafening. His expression shifted from annoyance to confusion, then finally settled on disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "You heard me," I continued, my voice trembling now. "February 94, December?" Hold on," he interrupted, holding up a hand as if to physically stop my words. "I had plenty of girlfriends back then. You think I can remember every single one?" "I don't care about your excuses," I snapped, tears welling up despite my best efforts to hold them back. "All I've ever wanted was for you to see me, to acknowledge me. But even now, when you finally know the truth, you still refuse to let anyone get close to you." His jaw tightened, but otherwise, he showed no reaction. No flicker of regret, no hint of emotion. Just stone-cold silence. "So that's it?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "You hear that you have a daughter, a flesh-and-blood connection, and you act like it's nothing? Like I'm just another nuisance cluttering your perfect little world?" "What do you want from me, Molly?" he asked, his voice low and devoid of warmth. "A hug? A heartfelt apology? Do you think any of that would change who I am or who you are?" "Yes!" I shouted, slamming my fist against his desk. "I wanted a father, someone who cared enough to show up, not just when it was convenient, but when it mattered most." For a split second, I thought I saw something crack in his armor. A flicker of vulnerability, maybe even guilt. But just as quickly it vanished, replaced by the same cold detachment he'd worn since the beginning. "Listen," he said after a pause, standing and walking toward the door. "If you're staying, fine. But don't expect anything from me. Ever." As he opened the door, I whispered brokenly, "I hate you." He froze mid-step but didn't turn around. Instead, he simply said, "Good," and walked out, leaving me alone in the suffocating quiet of his office. The air in Dr. Gibson's office was suffocating, heavy with unspoken truths and unresolved wounds. I stood there, trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of everything left unsaid between us. My confession had shattered whatever fragile pretense of civility existed between us, leaving only raw emotion behind. His back was turned to me as he stared out the window, his silhouette stark against the fading daylight. For a man who prided himself on control, he looked unusually still, like a statue frozen mid-fall. "So," he began after an eternity of silence, his voice devoid of warmth or inflection. "You're my daughter." "Yes," I replied, my own voice breaking under the strain. "And you knew about it all along, didn't you?" He didn't answer immediately, instead reaching for a chess piece on his desk. A knight, its edges worn smooth from years of use. He turned it over in his hand as if studying something infinitely more interesting than me. "Even if I did," he said finally, What difference does it make now? You think knowledge changes anything? It should, I shot back, anger bubbling up like lava. It should mean something that we're family. That maybe, just maybe, you'd care enough to acknowledge me. His laugh was bitter, cutting through the room like shards of glass. Acknowledge you? What do you want, Molly? A parade? A medal? Do you honestly believe blood ties magically erase 25 years of nothing? Why are you so determined to push everyone away? I demanded, tears streaming down my face. Is it easier to hate people than to let them in? To actually feel something for once in your miserable life? You don't know a damn thing about my life, he snapped, slamming the chess piece onto the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot, making me flinch. You waltz in here thinking you can fix everything, solve every problem with your little speeches. But you can't fix this. You can't fix me. I'm not trying to fix you, I shouted, gripping the edge of his desk to steady myself. I just wanted a father. Someone who would look at me and see more than just another disappointment. Well, congratulations, he spat, turning to face me at last. His eyes were cold, empty voids that offered no comfort, no hope. You found him. And guess what? He's exactly who you thought he'd be. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something, anything, to break the unbearable tension hanging between us. But I couldn't move. All I could do was stand there, broken and defeated, as he dismissed me with a wave of his hand. Close the door on your way out, he muttered, already retreating into his fortress of indifference. For a moment, I considered staying, forcing him to listen, to understand. But what was the point? No amount of yelling or pleading would penetrate the walls he'd built around himself. So I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I closed the door behind me, I whispered one final time, I hate you. Whether he heard me or not, I'll never know. But as I stood alone in the hallway, clutching my medical bag like a lifeline, I realized something. Our story wasn't over. Not yet. There was too much pain, too much unfinished business between us. Whatever happened next, whether reconciliation or estrangement, it would define both our futures. And for now, that uncertainty hung over me like a storm cloud, dark and unrelenting. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.